Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Ari, and today we're going to have some more stories about our toxic life. But before we start, it would be so much appreciated if you would subscribe to my channel, like the video, if you enjoy it, and maybe leave a comment down below. These simple clicks would mean a lot to the future of this channel and really reward the effort that I put in every day. And now without further ado, let's go. Today's first story. In this story, after a tumultuous relationship, Scarlett's betrayal shattered the OP's trust and marriage. Despite past warnings, their love story led to marriage and impending parenthood. Devoted to Scarlett during her pregnancy, his world collapsed upon discovering her infidelity with a handyman. Despite a paternity confirmation, the marriage ended in divorce, leaving Scarlett with postpartum depression, while the narrator focused on raising their son alone, unable to forgive. Now let's get into the story. My ex-wife Scarlett decided to betray my trust and destroy everything we had in the most embarrassing way. Scarlett and I had been friends in college before we began dating. I finished college a year before her, and I started working at my father's company immediately after. Before Scarlett and I dated, she used to be the kind of girl that always wanted the attention of different men, and that was like a red flag for me. But I didn't pay much attention to that. Then I got to know her better and I found out that she acted that way because she was the only child of her parents. But she lost them at the age of 4, and because of that tragic incident, she had to be raised by her grandmother, who showered her with a lot of love and attention. When we became close friends, I explained to her the kind of wrong signals she was giving out to the other guys, and she stopped her whole attention thing. The truth is, I love Scarlett so much and I was willing to be patient with her until she changed. She changed, reduced how she hums around men, and started spending time with only her friends. So when I asked her to officially be my girlfriend, she said yes. And that moment was the beginning of our love story. Initially, my plan for us was to get married after dating for a year or two, but because of Scarlett's attention issues, we broke up a couple of times and came back together. And each time we made up and came back together, she would apologize for acting that way. And because of how I felt about her, I always forgave her. After dating for 4 years, we got married. It was one of the happiest days of my life because I believed I was fulfilling my dream of getting married to Scarlett. After the wedding, we rented a bigger and fancier apartment with the money gift my father gave to us, and we moved into a new neighborhood. This neighborhood was almost 5 times better than my previous one, and Scarlett loved everything about it. The neighbors were friendly, and the people who weren't too busy with work and life talked to me occasionally. About 2 months later, we discovered Scarlett was pregnant, and I was very excited about it. I wanted to be a father before I clocked 30, especially since my dad kept telling me he had me at 21. With the news of Scarlett's pregnancy, I asked her to stop working and I took care of whatever she wanted. I did this because it was her first pregnancy and I heard stories of how uncomfortable first pregnancies could be, so I didn't want to stress herself in any way. Her pregnancy hormones had the best of her too, and I wanted her to always be in a place she was comfortable in. The following months we shopped for baby stuff together. The scan results said it was going to be a boy, so we got things for a baby boy. It was exciting for me, and I was excited about our son. Whenever it was time for Scarlett's checkup, I made sure that I canceled everything I was doing and we go there together. Within the first 6 months, our son's nursery was already set up. We hired a well-recommended handyman who came in to build the nursery until everything was ready, particularly about the nursery. I didn't want to wait a month or 2 before we fixed it. I wanted everything to be perfect for our son. When Scarlett got into her second trimester, I asked her to stop cooking and did the cooking myself. Well, I won't really say I cooked much because most of her weird cravings were something I could not prepare. So I bought most of her food combinations from restaurants while I made mine. Also, at least every month, I made it my responsibility to buy something fancy for Scarlett. I saw how fast her body was changing the stretch marks and the additional weight she got, and I understood that she was sacrificing our body to bear our son, which meant a lot to me. She loved the gifts, and most of them had nothing to do with size. Instead, it was mainly stuff like jewelry, tickets to shows, the cooking where she always wanted, and other things she appreciated. But despite giving all of this to her, I still had the perfect push gift for her, which was going to be a car. My dad loaned me some money to get her dream car for her, and I wanted to surprise her with it after we returned home with our son, who we wanted to name Stanley. Finally, the week she was meant to give birth came, and we went to the hospital a day before. On that day, I was swamped because I had to go back and forth to get everything she needed. I had already been at the hospital, so I told Scarlett I would return home to shower. After showering and resting for an hour or two, I decided it was time to return to the hospital because I didn't want to miss my first child's birth. As I was about to go into my car, I bumped into one of my neighbors and told him I was going to see Scarlett at the hospital. When I said so, he looked bothered about something and I asked him what was wrong. He struggled a bit before he told me he had seen the same handyman I hired for Stanley's nursery go in and come out of the house the previous month in his Ring camera. So I asked to see the videos. I was very confused because we had not called for anything and Scarlett had never mentioned anything about him coming to the house. When my neighbor showed me the videos, I was dumbfounded and I felt my heart constrict when I saw pictures of Scarlett kissing the handyman on her front porch, and I could not believe it. I asked my neighbor's permission to take the video to the hospital and he allowed me. I was so mad at Scarlett and I began to yell at her as soon as I stepped into the room. There was a nurse in there with her trying to change her for, but I did not mind. I was so angry that I called her names, and when I asked her about the handyman, she denied having any to do with him. But when I showed her the videos, she admitted that it was a one-time thing, but I didn't believe her. The people in the video did not look like it was their first time. When she knew that I didn't believe her, she began to cry, but I didn't care. My voice was thunderous and other patients were starting to come around. She was so embarrassed and could not even look up at me or anyone in the room at the same time. I ordered a DNA test, and the nurse had to call the main doctor. The doctor tried to call me, but it didn't change how people looked at my wife with shame. The doctor followed the DNA procedures, and the test result was out. Hours later, I was the father of my baby. Finally, she gave birth but went to her grandmother's house after delivery instead. She cried throughout the recovery from her C-section. Like didn't care anymore. We divorced as soon as I found out she was cheating on me, and later on left her at her grandmother's house. And she had postpartum depression. My son is 3 years old now, and he's a healthy big boy. I love him more than I love myself and would do anything for him. Scarlett still looks miserable whenever I see her, but no matter how she tries to beg, no amount of words can make me forgive her. Today's second story. In this story, a couple, married for 5 years, enjoyed an active lifestyle until the wife's behavior changed. Suspicious, the husband discovered she had been seeing another man. Confronted, she confessed but begged forgiveness. Unwilling to forgive, he ended the marriage. Despite her pleas, he remained resolute while she faced consequences. He moved on, embracing independence and new beginnings, unfazed by her actions. Now let's get into the story. My wife, 34 female, and I, 40 male, were married for 5 years. We were both very active together, going on hikes and gym dates. We lived near the beach, so every morning we got to run together right by the water. The 7 years of our relationship were blissful. The only family we had at all was my mill. She and my wife were very close. They had a good relationship, and I was thankful. She had a good role model. I basically grew up on the streets, always kicked out of my stepfather's house. I had absolutely no family besides my wife. I really depended on her, but not as much as I depended on myself. I had no choice to become self-reliant, so I swore if anything ever happened between us, I would stay strong. No woman would be the end of me. Of course, I met some pretty terrible women, but I had no idea my wife would fail me too. Whenever I went to work, my wife would go on long-distance walks without me. Sometimes she walked 25,000 steps in a day. She could walk downtown, around a few blocks, and back home. Sometimes she stopped at the street vendors or the cafe for a treat. She usually texted me at least one little update or photo about her day, so I knew what she was up to and that she was safe. She started skipping some days, and I noticed when I got home she wasn't as excited to see me. She wasn't as talkative at dinner, and just seemed like there was something on her mind. I was already thinking she met someone. Something in my gut told me she did. One night she was drawing something, but didn't want to show me what it was. The next morning, curiosity got the better of me, so I looked at my wife's drawing while she was in the shower. It was a perfect sketch of AP, although I didn't know that at the time. It was just some man I never saw before. But of course, I was worried. As soon as she got out of the shower, I asked her who it was and added more questions to that, like why she'd been distancing herself. She played dumb and said this was why she didn't want to show me. She didn't want me to worry about it. It was just a guy she saw on one of her walks. Since she'd been acting strange and just drew another man's face. I asked her if I could see her phone. She didn't want to give it to me and said I was acting crazy. I told her if she had nothing to hide, she could show me her phone and nothing would come of it. Instead, she said I was on power trip and stressed about nothing. The sun was setting as she left the house for a walk. I tried asking her to stay, but she refused. She was gone for hours. When she came back, she handed me her phone. Of course, it was cleared of anything. But what I found interesting was that she said she was going on a walk, but there were only 500 steps on the app that day. So did she get in someone else's car or go into a neighbor's house just before she fell asleep? I asked her what she did while she was out. She sighed dramatically and told me she was walking the whole time. So I asked her if that was true, why she only had 500 steps that day. She was silent, but I could feel her lockup and her breathing became weird. I really freaked her out when I said I pulled up her recent trips on maps and found an address. She started to admit she did get a ride with someone, but they dropped her off in some random neighborhood where she sat on someone's porch for hours without them knowing. Just then, her phone on the nightstand popped up with a message. She knew I was going to ask about it, so she tried to avoid that by taking it to the bathroom. I asked her to leave her phone with me if she had nothing to hide. She said she shouldn't have to do that, said I was being controlling. I told her I wasn't an idiot and knew she was seeing someone else. She was surprised that I said it. She started shaking and I could see that her heart rate was through the roof. She admitted she had become friends with that man she drew. I asked if that was who just texted her. She immediately said no. That was her mom. I asked if I could see it and she freaked out. She said she was trying to be honest with me, but I wouldn't believe her. I asked again to see her phone, so shakily she unlocked it and quickly dismissed the new message to pull up the thread with her mom. I took her phone and went back to the list of messages and only caught a glimpse of it before she pulled her phone back. It was too late though. I saw it was from someone programmed as friend, and he said I want to have you again, which was pretty incriminating. When I told her I saw it and what it said, she was furious and didn't know what to do next. There were no words. She started packing her luggage in the hopes that I would ask what she was doing or try to stop her. I just let her pack until she broke down sobbing and asked me to forgive her. I asked if she was asking forgiveness for cheating, and she said yes. I told her I promised myself I would never forgive a cheating woman. She just started crying and packing all over, again wailing like this was my fault. She stopped once again to ask me to forgive her and forget about this because she would never see him or talk to him again. I told her that wasn't going to happen and she needed to leave. I had to call her mom to come pick her up from our marital home because our marriage was over and she cheated on me. She could be heard in the background, freaking out and denying it. Her mother came confused and disappointed. I was the one to load most of her stuff while they cried. Her mother told me she was sorry and looked at her daughter like she was a disappointment. I heard 3 weeks later that she was kicked out of her mom's for refusing to do anything at all. It's like she broke after losing me. Meanwhile, I bought a puppy and have started dating again while her cheating hurt. It's not the worst thing that could have happened. I still have my heart and self. She didn't take me down with her.